It's the 29th of January 2023, and you're watching AIM on Air, where specialising in connecting companies with its shareholders is what we do best. Hello and welcome back to AIM on Air. My name is Liam, and today I'm pleased to be hosting Shaun Day, Managing Director from Greatland. Welcome back, Shaun.
Hi, Liam, and thank you very much for having me on AIM on Air again.
It's a quarterly update time, and before we get into what's happened over the last quarter, I always like to throw you a little icebreaker. And Mark wonders if there's a particular car that you've owned or would like to own that stands out as a particular favourite.
We were a Volvo family once upon a time. We had, I think, about 6 Volvos in the family at one stage, the old 240 GL. But I think if I was aspiring to a car, I think it might be more Aston Martin than Volvo. We don't
classic.
have any Volvos left these days.
Fair enough. A nice tick, Aston Martin. I love it. Okay, so let's start with the update itself, released last week, where you highlighted that over 3,060 metres of decline has been completed or developed. Do you think that the light at the end of the tunnel, pardon the pun, is now in sight?
Yeah, look, we're definitely getting closer. We're some 340 metres of vertical development. It's about 420 metres to the bottom of that Permian layer and into the country rock where the ore body sits. It's quite a clean contact point there because the top of the ore body had actually been eroded off once upon a time by a glacier or something. So as soon as you're through that Permian, you're basically into the ore body. So that just mathematically is about 81% of vertical advancement. So not just kind of getting close to the end, but pretty tangible. It's exciting.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Q4 2023, would you say you achieved your objectives?
Yeah, look, I think it was a really busy and productive quarter for Greatland. I think if we take our minds back to that, it was really the reaction to Newcrest not getting out that resource update in I think August 2024, and we came out and said, look, late in that December quarter, we're intending to put out our own updated resource. We're very clear about the steps we wanted to put forward, but we really celebrate achieving it. I know we'll talk about it later, but it was an important milestone for our shareholders and testament to the team here. I think also, we welcomed in Newmont as a new shareholder or new partner in the joint venture. It's the world's biggest gold mining company. They've got a tremendous track record of success, a tremendous culture. The relationship's off to a great start. We hugely respect them. That's been fun. And then we've kind of finished the year, and as we spoke just beforehand, the Australian Christmas, New Year kind of is rolled into our summer holidays. So the team's had a bit of a break and come back recharged after achieving what we wanted to achieve in that December quarter.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we started the quarter with the announcement that temporary pause in decline development to ensure a more effective entry into the lower aquifer. There's some murmurings amongst some of the shareholders suggesting that MEM have chosen to and instructed Newcrest to do this on purpose to stall productivity of the development before they update the market in the coming weeks. Would you care to comment on that, please?
Yeah, well, let me approach that in two parts. So let's just talk about the operational part, because that's probably the most interesting for me. So look, to recap, we have 6 drill holes into that lower contained aquifer. That's allowing the depressurization, and it means presently we are taking a volume of that water up to surface for evaporation. It was important to stand off that lower contained aquifer until it's depressurized and materially dewatered. And really that's because you never want an uncontrolled ingress of water into your decline. You want it to all be a very controlled environment. And I think Newcrest did a really good job at mathematically sitting back and saying, okay, well, here's here's the standoff area that we should have, and then adding a sensible margin of safety to that. So I think, in terms of safeguarding and in terms of thinking about the way to develop this asset in a safe and efficient manner, I think it was the right decision, and Greatland absolutely supported that decision at the time. In terms of the joint venture itself, look, this was a Newcrest decision. I can absolutely confirm for people, in the lead up to that decision, we had a huge amount of dialogue and conversation with Newcrest about it. We went through a lot of the maths and water balance equations with them as part of that decision. And ultimately, we became convinced, as they were, that this was the right decision. And that was all before the takeover by Newmont. Of course, they were aware that transaction was likely to happen. It was in the lead up to the shareholder vote. But to quote Newcrest, it was business as usual as far as they were concerned, particularly before that shareholder vote. It was absolutely a Newcrest decision, and I think I was the first person to even brief Newmont about the decision when I first caught up with them. So I think I can say that with a huge amount of confidence.
No, thank you very much for that. That hopefully will put a lot of people's minds at ease. Speaking of dewatering, how is it coming along? It's probably about a quarter since that all started.
Yeah, look, I think, as I mentioned, we're pumping water to surface. The initial focus is around the depressurization, which is proceeding. I think some of the initial water pressure was a little bit lower than kind of modelled, which is a positive. Less water is good when you're dewatering. So, it's premature to talk because there's a lot of maths going in around pumping rates and trying to get more refined calculations. But I think just to say, so far, so good.
Awesome. Thank you. Any idea when we're going to start the decline back up, or is that sort of once the maths have all sorted themselves out and the water's all disappeared?
Yeah, well, look, it's always a little bit, and let me just kind of clarify. It's not about making all the water disappear, even through that upper aquifer and middle aquifer. We continue to pump. It's just about getting it to a controlled equilibrium.
Okay.
Because when you first go into these aquifers, they're under pressure. The water will flow really fast for a period of time until you get it stabilized. But in terms of giving guidance, I know people want to hear that. We have our own understanding and expectations, but it's very difficult for us to give that outside of the manager because it is ultimately we have to do these things hand in glove with our joint venture partner. So it's difficult for us to comment unilaterally on that. And again, it's probably just worth harking back that the whole development of Havieron was done on an accelerated development basis. It's been an exceptional journey. The decline was commenced by Newcrest and Greatland even before we had the original PFS study. This sets up a multi-decade asset, but our number one priority is safety and is the long-term achievement of this goal. It's not a race as to which quarter we get in there. It's about doing it well, doing it properly, and doing it safely. So we're kind of confident about where that is headed for the second half of this year.
Okay, that so makes sense to set yourself up for the future as best as you can, as opposed to cutting it short and just getting there as fast as you can, as you say. So, the 3rd of November saw you release the first of the anticipated drill results for the drilling campaign that was carried out over 2023. The first with a return of 0.266 parts per million of gold and 0.17 parts per million gold at Stingray. Did you find any other Pathfinder metals down there?
Yeah, we did. Just to recap, this is all part of the Rio Tinto joint venture and farming agreement into that Paterson South. We moved very quickly to drill to initial targets Stingray and Decker. I think we actually managed to mobilise a drill rig within a 1 month of signing that agreement, which I think is testament to our excitement about the ground. and we think we have a large number of high priority targets. With Stingray and Decker between them, I think it was about 8 drill holes that were able to complete about 2,800 meters of drilling. And there was some gold and copper results as you described. And there were a series of pathfinders. Yeah, I think bismuth and arsenic are normally the two we most talk about. There's also some tellurium, which the guys pick up, and again is another pathfinder. So I think all of those pathfinders were there, and we continue to kind of reinterpret that along that strike length, which does go up to a third anomaly as well, and we'll revisit whether that, about how we recalibrate that as we continue to interpret those results and do more surface geophysics.
Okay, thank you. And then on the 14th came the news that you must have been elated to share with the market. Drilling commences 100% owned Ernest Giles project. You must have been so pleased that you got that one over the line.
Yeah, look, absolutely wrapped. It's been kind of years in the making getting the access agreement there. We did bring on a tremendous addition to our team, Mick, who is charged with cultural heritage and community relations. He did a great job. We're the first company to have a land access agreement on that ground. Obviously, the first time Greatland's had access to the Ernest Giles area in around 5 years. This is a Archean greenstone, part of the Yilgarn Craton, which is northeast of Kalgoorlie, but a hugely prolific area in the Yilgarn in the context of Australian gold mining. Think the Super Pit, think Laverton, think Jundee. And most of these Archean greenstones are closely held. They've been drilled like a pin cushion. So for us to kind of get one of these, which is effectively untested, it's undercover, but we like being undercover. It's really what we've geared up our team to do. But also, you're not going to find 10 million ounce ore bodies expressing at surface. If I take us back to the Paterson, why was Telfer kind of identified in the late 1960s, 1970s, and then Havieron not until 2019, 2020, is because of a cover sequence. If things that have an expression of surface and they're significant, they've been identified in Australia, but undercover, you can find really meaningful deposits. The geotech or the geophysics on this lights up like a Christmas tree. We're super excited about it. We have, again, mobilised really quickly to get a rig up there. These were some EIS funding holes, so support by the WA government. But they were a priority for us. It remains a priority for us. And those assays are still coming back. But we'll be announcing those results, I would think, this quarter. And we'll continue to kind of work through more heritage clearance there. And I'd really expect us to be drilling again in the course of 2024. It's a great location. That and the Paterson are as good a two exploration projects as you'll have in a gold vehicle. So super excited, and Ernst & Giles is obviously the new thing. So particularly good fun for the geology team.
Speaking of the geology team, we're closing on the end of November, and you surprised the market with a cheeky news release of nickel prospectivity confirmed in soil sampling at Panorama. The PI base likes to think it knows exactly what's going on, but with this one, you showed that you're not just working on the Rio, Scallywag or Ernest Giles projects. Some of the geologists have been for a little exploration around the Panorama project, and it returned some interesting results, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And look, I think we aim and intend to be active managers of our portfolio. Again, Panorama has been in the portfolio, since long before I joined, but never really tested. So it was one of our goals this year, in 2023, to get on the ground there at Panorama and try to understand. We thought it had propensity for gold, copper, and nickel. And it was really centered around a surface sampling, which followed up an airborne electromagnetic survey, so geophysical work. There were some 27 targets, but what was actually super interesting was we kind of had this coherent, continuous 800-meter strike length where we had multiple samples as high as kind of 0.3 nickel grade, again as surface, which does kind of suggest there's some mobilization in that area. And then what the team wants to do is try to kind of understand where there's a trap there to create a larger kind of ore body where it intersects to produce kind of a sulfides to kind of produce this kind of ore body structure. We look at the geophysical conductors around there and we see a number of these coincidences of kind of geochemical and geophysical anomalies. So we actually think it's reasonably prospective now. It in many ways it exceeded our expectations. We probably wanted to go up there with a view of, is this something we want to keep or not? I think clearly it warrants further attention. I appreciate nickel's a little bit unloved at the moment. We love our portfolio of gold and copper. If I had to pick a portfolio, that would be it. But it's good to have diversification. It's good to have nickel there. There's lots of ways to monetize, a good deposit, but optionality is helpful. Life is about optionality. So having nickel into the mix, commodities can be cyclical. As sure as it's in a bit being unloved now, it will have another brilliant time again. So great to have that in the portfolio. We are going to try to understand it further and try to understand what is the best way to create value as an active manager of our portfolio for shareholders. And that could be retaining it. It could be divesting it. There is a myriad of things we're interested in. But certainly the way to increase value is to understand it some more.
Okay, so closing in on Christmas and the results from the Scallywag exploration program are released. 1 meter at 8.3 grams per tonne and a peak copper of 2 meters at 0.17 with copper. Are you getting to understand what's happening down there now at Scallywag?
Yeah, look, these are actually quite long strike lengths. So there are multiple, I guess, targets and structures even within a single exploration lease. And again, it's just the size of Australia, of the Paterson and of these exploration leases. So I don't think any one kind of target is conclusive. But we were able to go in there, and I think we do increasingly. It's the aggregate of that information that gives us a better and better understanding. I think it was about a 9-hole drill program for about 2,500 meters. And again, we found some pathfinders. We found some kind of gold and copper mineralization of there. But really, it's all part of this being an iterative process. But I think what was most interesting for me was that MT survey that we followed up on. And this is a really good element of how we think about geophysical testing and looking through cover. And what we're able to do there is complete that work, interpret that MT survey with which has identified a conductor, and then we've kind of been able to recalibrate the drilling that we did and the pathfinders, recalibrate where we thought the conductor was. That tends to now marry up with that kind of MT survey, which gives us a really interesting target for 2024. So I think that the short answer is yes, we think we understand it, and we think we've kind of zeroed in on a high quality target, and that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to use geophysics. We're trying to use some initial drill results to help us vector in on what we're trying to target and what we think is the origin, or at least the center of gravity for these anomalous gold copper readings that we're getting in the area. So it's a detective story, but it's one that we feel we've progressed well.
That makes sense. Thank you. Can I just clarify, what does MT survey mean? What's a MT survey?
So it's the magnetotelluric survey, if I've said that right.
Hence why it's
my
just
understanding
MT.
it's like a passive acoustic survey. So it's just one in the quiver. A lot of the other kind of testing we do is an active seismic, where you're creating the noise or the sound waves to kind of bounce back information. In this way, you're harvesting natural variations in the sensors, and each of them have different strengths. But in this case, we've found that the MT survey is probably given an additional level of illumination and insight.
Thank you. And I can totally understand why you call it an MT survey and not what you said. I'm not even going to try and say it. Okay. So, and then as an early Christmas present, the team released the peer-reviewed 8.4 million ounce mineral resource estimate. Would you care to talk about what that means for Greatland, please?
Yeah, look, we've got the best to last here. The mineral estimate is a really important update for us. For me, the highlight of the quarter, moving up to 8.4 million ounces gold equivalent was a 29-30% increase from when we last updated in March 2022. The team here did a tremendous job to create that update. We also shared it with our joint venture partner, and that's not to say they sign off on it, but we certainly wanted to give them an opportunity to understand our perspective. And we had it independently reviewed by SRK ahead of announcement. So we go through what we think is a really vigorous quality assurance process. And if we hark back to that March 22 update, in the end, Newcrest and us were less than 1% apart in our interpretation. They were actually a fraction higher than us, which we thought was testament to the team here. The other thing I'd really add to this is the increase in the indicated category. So that's an increase in confidence. That's really important because that's where your reserve can come from. Reserves don't come from inferred. You need a higher level of confidence for something to be a reserve. So that indicated category is what we can move across, coupled with a study. So again, anchored around that feasibility study. But that gives a bit of a line of sight on where that can potentially lead to. So I think that increase is equally important. Overall, if you have a look at our interpretation, it's evolved a little bit. Previously, our narrative was around, here is the southeast crescent, here is the northern breccia, and here is a higher grade eastern breccia. What we've now done is kind of said, okay, well, we continue to have this standout feature being that southeast crescent, which again, to remind people, is high grade, and we now have over 1,000 vertical meters extent, and we increase that by another 200 meters, the vertical extent, and it remains open. But what we've done is then we've created this link zone. So there was this gap between the southeast crescent and what was previously defined as the eastern breccia. As we've centered and targeted that area, it's actually quite good grade. So we've created that as a link zone, so the ore body does continue across there and at reasonable grade as well. And then the final piece in the puzzle, what we've done is wrap that breccia, those old eastern breccia and northern breccia units, the bit that doesn't come into the southeast crescent, the bit that doesn't come into the link zone, we're just now going to call that the breccia. So I think it's a evolved understanding, and I think we're also trying to get out an updated interactive map of the ore body, which we did last year, and I think that will kind of bring it to life a little bit for people, because certainly, I enjoy, and one of the advantages we have is we can bring it up in the software and kind of spin around in the ore body, and that really does help the understanding. We want to share that with our shareholders, and of course, I can't talk about the resource without mentioning ounces per vertical meter. Effectively, we're 7,900, 8,000 ounces per vertical meter over 1,000 vertical meter strike length.
Wow.
That is outstanding. It's going to drive our all-in sustaining cost. It's going to drive our capital efficiency and help us develop a multi-decade world-class gold copper mine. It's exciting. The ore body continues to improve.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you. As we wrap up this quarterly interview, I wondered if you could comment, please, on the sunset clause. I know the company has had some emails on it recently, and it surfaced as a topic of discussion when I look around the community. But could you elaborate what it means and what outcomes are expected with it, please, just so that it's clear for everybody?
Yeah. Look, thanks, Liam. I'm happy to clarify this. And again, it's us trying to clarify information that's kind of out in the marketplace. So I think when you think about it in the context of the joint venture agreement, so the next kind of technical step is completion and delivery of that feasibility study, which will ultimately be shared with the market. And then soon after, we have this point where the two joint venture partners need to make a formal decision to mine. And the joint venture doesn't prescribe a date for the feasibility study, albeit we've talked about that being in the second half of the year. And ahead of, it does need to be ahead of commercial mining. But what that has, and some people have asked about, is what happens if both parties don't agree to the final investment decision? Well, one party is able to take it forward. And by virtue of that, buy out the other joint venture partner. For good order, I think that's highly unlikely to apply. Greatland, we're obviously buzzing about the opportunity, but equally, we think this is a world-class gold copper asset in a tier 1 jurisdiction. So I don't think this has a lot of practical application, but I think that's where people are trying to understand. Once that feasibility study is out, it needs to be out before the commencement of commercial mining. And it also does trigger this. Both parties have to agree to go ahead. If not, one party can emerge with 100%. I don't think we're going to get that opportunity, but if we do, we would be delighted. But I think people should really put that to one side and assume that both joint venture parties will want to progress this asset.
Wonderful. That's very helpful. Thank you very much. Shaun Day, Managing Director of Greatland, thank you for coming onto the show today. As always, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to address the shareholders directly. Have you any words for them today?
Oh, look, just to say firstly, really appreciate you taking the time to catch up, Liam, and the thought you put into those questions. Always enjoy being on the program. And more broadly for shareholders, we really appreciate the support. I think you should see Newmont as a positive development. And we continue to be excited about the option value around our exploration, the option value around our corporate circumstances, but also just the base case of developing Havieron over the next 12 plus months, I think is a pathway to a really high quality asset being the cornerstone of Greatland.
Thank you. Until next time, my name's Liam, and you've been watching AIM on Air, where specialising in connecting companies with its shareholders is what we do best. Thank you.